a little overview on what I'm going to show you today. First I want to go into EASYProcess, dig in a little bit just to show you how EASYProcess works, what the different components it consists of, and kind of what you can do with it. And then I want to show you integration into SharePoint and how we do it. And then we're going to actually integrate with SharePoint. We're going to do like a live web part creation, and then we'll make some changes and see how that reflects in the portal as we go.
Right. Okay.
All right. So first things first. So this is EASYProcess. This is the actual development platform that you're looking at now. I like to think of it consisting of really 4 major components. The first one would be the web part. So this is the display portion of EASYProcess. So if I go into my web part list and I just go to some test web part, this is...
Are we seeing your screen right here?
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know if you're paused. It looks like it's not updating.
Yeah, it's not updating. Here, let me come back here. Oh, maybe I got to click on that.
No. You're starting to see my screen, but it's just not really showing.
Yeah, they did see your screen. That's right. Do a stop and a start from your perspective with sharing the screen. There we go. That's a stop. I'll do another start. Okay, did you see a refresh there?
All right, it looks like your mouse moving, so I think that's good.
Refresh stayed in the upper left.
Yeah, I see that button.
You see me selecting? Yeah.
You see?
Looks like
Yep.
It's good.
Okay, good.
All right, there we go. Not sure what happened there. Okay, so this is essentially a web part list. Web parts are components of a web page. So if I go in here, let's say to this test web part, so it's kind of like a visual representation of what you would see if you loaded this web part on the page. So you have your web part container, which is the gray portion out here. Then you have sections, and then inside of sections you have components such as buttons. And if you look here on the left side, we have buttons, calendars, charts, checkboxes, trees, hyperlinks, pretty much anything you can think of we have there. And then the best part about it is it's all drag and drop. So let's say I wanted to just drag and drop a section here. I can do nested sections. I can format it to be, to display exactly like I want. So if I want this outer section to display in 2 columns, it can do that for me. And you don't have to actually build the web part to see what's going on. It shows you in the code itself.
So once again, the toolbox, what you're selecting is on the left. The properties for that are shown on the right.
Yes.
Okay.
So if I go ahead and drag and drop a text box, each component, like Doug said, has its own set of properties. So a text box, if you look on the right, we have the name, description, and then there's massive amounts of properties here. The one used most often would be a text element, so right here. So if I add some hard-coded value here, this is a test, that would be the actual value of that text box when the page loads. So we can actually do a web part tester here. Oh, you know what? I'll load it into SharePoint before I do that. It's got me set up on SharePoint. But that's essentially what a web part is. It's the visual component of EASYProcess where you can organize fields on the page. And then web part has a component inside of it called the data source. So this is where you can actually tie data that's shown on the web part to some outside data source. So here you can see we have some configuration settings. If I wanted to add some data from JDE, all I do is drag and drop the JDE connection information.
Right.
And then I can fill out my file name here. So if I wanted to query something on F0101, then I would just do that, save and close, data source name, test data source. So now here we have a data source here on the left side. So if I open that, it gives me all of the columns available to me for that specific data source, and that's all drag and drop. So if I wanted to add every column here as like a list section,
Right.
you can drag and drop, select which columns you want, and then click add, and that creates a list section here, which will repeat this section for the number of rows returned from that specific query, and that's what you see on the screen.
So with JD Edwards, we're integrating at the business function level, which is where you would want us to integrate from. It's not like we're doing any type of batch or Z file or EDI. It's straight at the business function API level.
Well, this is like a data source query.
Right.
It's using regular database drivers. As far as pushing data to JDE, that's when we use business function.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So
now,
go ahead.
I've got a question about that, if you don't mind. When you're pulling the data out of JDE, now is there a way to normalize that data before you display it?
Like date?
Yes, and
Right,
I'll
like a date field or numeric fields, put the decimals in, that sort of thing.
So I'm gonna do a real-time web part. It's pretty much going to be like an address book lookup. When I do that, you'll see we have this thing called the value transformation. So you convert the Julian format from JDE into some date that you can actually recognize.
Right.
Okay, so that's web part in a nutshell. So now I'm going to move over to a process.
Okay.
This is really where all the power is in EASYProcess. You can see here on the left side we have our different libraries.
So we call this our process canvas, right?
Process canvas, yep.
Okay.
So here on the left side, it's a list of all of our different services that we have available in EASYProcess. If I had to count them all, I'd say there's at least 150, something like that. But they're organized into categories. So here we have database services. So this is where you can, do your inquires, database transactions like update, insert, run query, different database transactions. You have date time services, so get current date time, subtract 2 dates. You have email services. You could send or receive emails from some SMTP server. Let's see. And then you have your JDE. Let me move this thing out of the way. You have your JDE XML services. So this is where you would actually call a business function, something like that. So just a quick example on how that works. So if I drag and drop a business function service here, and by the way this works is it's kind of like a flow. So if I were to connect the start to this service and then connect this to terminate, it would execute in that order. So it's like a sequential line of code, really.
Okay.
But just how we do connections to JDE. So if I open up this service, it has connection information about JDE, like host, port, all that kind of stuff. But if I go to call method, we have retrieve business function XML thing here. So this is where you can actually type in a business function name, and it will retrieve all of the parameters necessary for you to fill out. So let me think of one off the top of my head. 4211 FS headline. So this is where copy paste it in here, and it formats it for us so we can see this is the sales order edit line business function. It's just the first one that came to my head. But you can pretty much fill out the parameters here as necessary to do your JDE business function transaction. So just as an example, let's say we had, let's go to an evaluate. So an evaluate is kind of like a print statement, but EASYProcess is all XML based. So what it really does is it adds a piece of XML to the current state of the process. So in this evaluate, let's say I add something called test, and then give it an expression of this is my value. So since that's connected before the business function, I can use the output value of this service in the business function. So here, let's say I wanted to give my job number the value from the evaluate. Here on the right side, I can drag and drop the test output that I created into that business function parameter, just like that, and then pass that value in.
So we're going to pause here. Nathan, any questions?
How much familiarity do you have to have with JD Edwards to?
So business function logic, I would say that's the toughest part. What I normally do is, let's say you need to do some transaction in JDE that you don't know the business functions at all. You can either, depending on how good you are with the JDE client, you can go in and look at that specific application and see what business functions it calls under certain events. Or what I like to do is open up the JDE web client, do the transaction, and then go into the logs, and it gives you all of the inputs that it passes into a specific business function. So you can kind of see the transaction occur and then pull it out, do that, and then kind of mimic that same logic here in this business function. Does that make sense?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So Ken's our SharePoint guy. My background is in JDE, but he's pretty new to JDE, so.
Okay.
And you know what? There are websites out there in the world that help demystify business functions. I can send you some of those URLs.
I have if you look over, I have this little cheat sheet thing. It's actually an application that I created with EASYProcess that goes through JDE tables. So let's say you want to know what a column is in a specific table. So this is F0101. You could see ABAMA is address number. And then I also have something for business functions as well. Oops. So this is pretty much a list of all business functions in JDE. So if I go to that headline, it's pretty much documentation on the specific business function, like pretty much what each parameter does, the possible inputs, all that kind of stuff. So there's definitely stuff out there to help you with the business functions.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, and we're on SharePoint 2013, so that's not an issue, right?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure we integrate with all versions of SharePoint.
Yeah. I see. SharePoint Online as well?
That I'm not sure. Is that like a cloud version of SharePoint?
Yeah, Office 365.
I'm not sure.
I'll verify that. I'm writing that as a to-do. I'm almost about 99.9% sure. I'm almost 100% sure the answer is yes. But our chief architect is on vacation. He's coming back next week, and not only will I confirm it, but I'll validate it with a proof scenario of some sort.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Very good.
Okay, so that's pretty much the process in a nutshell. It can do very powerful things. It's also not just linear. We do have process flow objects like a binary decision where you can do some test case, evaluate true false, and then go to a specific place based on that. We have for each loops. So we wanted a loop on the outputs of this evaluate. This is a for each, so you can pretty much, for every output that you get from the evaluate, just do something for it, like send emails or whatever. But that's pretty much the process canvas. So now I want to move on to the workflow canvas. So the workflow canvas is pretty similar to the process canvas, except you can think of it as handing off papers from person to person in an office. It's for like approval chains or something like that of that nature. So this current example that we're looking at is the workflow the approval chain that we have set up for terminating an employee in our ESS portal. So you can see here the document starts at composing, and then it goes to the HR VP for approval. If he approves it, it goes over to HR benefits. If he approves it, it goes to payroll, and so on. And then we also have batch statuses that can run in the background without manual interaction. So for example, this admin lock, let's say we don't want any transactions to go to JDE under some certain period of time. What we normally like to do is allow the admin to log in, set a lock on all business function transactions, and this one's not connected, but essentially it would go like this. It would go to the admin lock, check, okay, is it locked? If it is locked, then it just sits there and it waits until somebody unlocks it. Once it's unlocked, then it actually updates JDE with the employee terminate.
Right. So the workflow canvas, if you look at like those little icons under submit to JDE, that why don't you just double click?
Oh yeah, sure. So just a brief explanation of what all this stuff is. The 3 gears are essentially different process canvases that execute under a different time. So the first one is executed as soon as you get to this specific status. So that's good for, at least for like, let's say the payroll status. As soon as it gets to the payroll status, we might want to send an email. So that's where the email service would go. This middle process is executed when, let's say, the payroll clerk either hits the approve or deny button. That's where the logic is here. So if I open that up, it should do checks. Okay, it does a check on the action. Is the action equal to manual? I'm not really sure what that means, but that's how it's coded right now. So if they click some button that executes some manual thing, it goes to either the JDE status exit or a manual status exit.
Right. Okay.
And then if we come back out, you can see here's JDE status exit, here's manual status exit here.
Right.
And then as far as submitting to JDE, that's actually not, it doesn't require any interaction. So I'm pretty sure this is an automated step. This arrival process will execute the middle process, and this is where we do our business function call. So let's see. Yep. So call create cache business function, employee master business function. So this is a real-time example of a business function call.
I'm going to pause here. Is this all making sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Is this something that was custom built, or is this an application you can buy?
Yes, this is custom built with EASYProcess.
But this is where, I have to add EASYProcess. Some people, I would say it's about 50-50. They want to do the development themselves. They buy EASYProcess. We can do full training in 2 weeks. You can take a developer, like a JDE developer, never done anything with web applications, and in about 2 weeks on average, teach them EASYProcess. But then we have these best practices out-of-the-box applications that exist on EASYProcess. Like we have employee self-service that deals with leave and move and terminate and profile and time cards. So, you know, you have to put in perspective that our applications, whether it's, and once again, 50%, a lot of companies out there, they just want to outsource. They don't want to have anything. They don't want to hear the word develop from us. So we give you the best of both worlds. And actually more and more people, when they start looking at the intricacies of, you know, what's the benefits of going with K-Rise, they see that they're not locked into a vendor like possibly other applications, that they in fact have the means to do things themselves or to outsource it to us. And so we actually have a lot of companies that both learn EASYProcess so they can do some development, yet they say to themselves, you know what, we know that you guys have consultants back there that can do it lickety-split. And so we cover really the whole spectrum from, you know, people not wanting to do development to the other end of the spectrum and everything in between.
Right. So Doug, if we were to purchase like an off-the-shelf application and we had EASYProcess and a business requirement changed, would we be able to go in, modify that off-the-shelf product that we purchased with EASYProcess?
Absolutely, because think about what you're buying with off-the-shelf. You're buying essentially these web parts, everything that Matt is showing right now. Some people take a project, give us the off-the-shelf, you know, and once again, it's you know, it's how we price it. Hey, just give us a good deal. We just want to use the off-the-shelf components and web parts they've already built in to work from. So it's kind of like Legos, you know. Hey, let's start from, you know, this Lego, but we want to change it a little bit. Yep. If you follow that analogy. So your statement is absolutely correct. And once again, it's a real positive reason why people invest in us, because the situation could change greatly from when you first buy it to a year from now. I don't know if you watched that 4-minute video from Caltro, but their portal, their SharePoint portal, they're literally adding to it like, you know, a project a month, and it's so extensive right now. They don't call us at all. They're experts at it. But of course, it wasn't that way at the very beginning. And Steve even mentioned that, the portal. They were depending on us a lot, you know, both for training and the initial applications.
I see.
Now, do you guys do updates to the EASYProcess application?
Absolutely. In fact, we're on version 4.7.
4.8.
4.8, excuse me, 4.8. And as an example, one of the, with 4.7, one of the big improvements was this workflow canvas that Matt showed. Yep. We've got companies doing, and like he said, you can go well beyond, you know, say one level up, a linear type of approval. Matt, look, we've got companies doing 9 levels deep, simultaneous.
Yeah. So the workflow itself, so like this one, it's linear, but we do have some of our customers, they do parallel approving. So let's say we go from composing to payroll, and then once payroll approves, let's say we want to do 2 different approval chains at the same time. So what you would do is you would create 2 more workflow in the workflow canvases. So here, design new workflow, and then you'd pretty much create a new request for each one of those workflows, and then this one, which I would like to call the master workflow, this next status would pretty much wait for those 2 workflows to finish, and then once they are finished, it would update JDE. So as complex of an approval change as you can think of can be
and that's just one example of your question. You know, when we do updates, and we hear this, obviously our development comes mostly from our customer base, and it's, you know, hey, can you add this? Even the services, like you said, we have like over 100 services. You can do now doing services, it actually involves programming. I mean, that comes outside. But we do the services ourselves all the time, and it's to benefit us, and it's to build, you know, it's like any integration tool. The more connectors we have, the better its position. So we can say, to Microsoft CRM or something like that.
One of the recent custom services that I did for a customer was converting a web page into a Word document. So
Okay,
something,
yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What happens when the version of SharePoint changes? Suppose SharePoint supposedly developed some solutions in 2013, and then we decide we're going to go to SharePoint 2016. Will the solutions migrate over? Okay.
Yeah. So go to our website. Right?
I'll show you. Oh, our website.
Yeah, go to our website because it's similar to JD Edwards. If JD Edwards was actually to do a departure from their business functions and the object that we use to call the business function, which if you reference your tools version and the interoperability manual, it's the XML call object. So that's what we're doing to get to the business functions. It's the same thing with SharePoint. So go into SharePoint there, go to, click on that, go to the IT, the tab that says IT, and go to SharePoint Services on the left right there. Go up right there. So once again, as long as those services from SharePoint are still there from one version to the next, by and large, we're going to be compatible.
All right. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, and you might not even be using any of these services to do anything in SharePoint. So like if you wanted to just build something that simply integrates to JDE and then display it on your SharePoint website, all that is creating a link between SharePoint and EASYProcess. Once that's done, the link between the link to JDE is done from EASYProcess to JDE. So upgrading SharePoint, all you would have to do is reestablish that link, and you'd be pretty solid.
Yeah, and it's the same with any application. I mean, SAP, their integration is what's called BAPIs, Business Application Programming Interface. And if those BAPIs were to change, yes, we would have to adapt. And for JD Edwards, we are a gold partner. Our application is validated, and we're fully aware of, and that's why, and by the way, that's why when we sell you a solution, our support, you know how you have maintenance on every software application? Not only is it the help desk and it's the software updates that we already touched on, but it's our guarantee that it's going to work with any future version of JD Edwards. Now, because we're also a Microsoft Gold partner, this application is based on .NET, so because we're at the same level with Microsoft, I'm actually going to do a follow-up with, once again, our chief architect about the same commitment. In other words, that's what you really want to hear from us. Whether it's SharePoint 13 or in the future SharePoint 16 or 18, you want to make sure you're covered. So it's actually a follow-up that I'll give you an update on. Good question.
Thanks.
Okay, were there any other questions, or are you guys ready to see the SharePoint integration?
I did the data normalization. Like, how would you handle that in here?
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and jump into the SharePoint integration, and we'll build that web part, and I'll show you that.
Okay. So that's part of this exercise right now.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So if I hop over to the actual SharePoint environment. So this is a quick example of our current ESS portal integrated fully into SharePoint. So you have My Profile, self-service, so you can update address information, first name, last name, pay stubs. You can look at all the checks for your pay stubs, and then you can export it into a PDF or just view it in a pop-up. You can request a leave, so start and end date, leave type. You can view all of your leave requests. So here's an example of that date conversion that you're talking about. This date is coming directly from JDE, and we'll see how to transform that date in a second. You have time entry, W-4 revisions, W-2 forms. You can see the forms. And then you have manager's workbench. So if you're a manager, you can see all of your subordinates and see like pop-up of information on them, etc. Terminate them, move them to a different position, look at their leave request, pay stub, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then one of the really cool features is the leave calendar. I really like this. It's a calendar view of your leave directly from JDE. So you can see Edward has pending leave on these days and so on.
And we can integrate this against Outlook calendars too, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Yes.
Okay, so now for the actual integration. So I have a little test page that I have here, and this is where we're gonna put our web part that we're gonna build. So before we do that, I do want to go to Site Settings, and we have this Configure EASYProcess integrated here. So this is where we tell SharePoint what application to look at. So, so this one, you can see it's in the demo environment, and the application is called ESS_JDE.
Right.
It's the same thing here. You tell it which database server to look at, the application name, database name. So that's how it points to EASYProcess and pulls the correct information. So now, really, what I want to do really quick is just create kind of a template web part here. So I'm going to design a new web part, and this is going to be employee lookup. And I'm just going to close it. It's going to be a completely empty web part. I just want it to show up in my list here. So now I'm going to take this template, and I'm going to export it as a SharePoint web part. It's going to be web part 279 on my C drive. Okay. So now if I hop back over to SharePoint, and I go to Site Settings, actually no. Let me go back to the test page. Where was it at? View all site content. Yeah, I forgot where to upload the web parts. There we go. There. Okay, so I'm going to upload the web part that I just exported. It's on my C drive. It's web part 279. Okay. So that's the employee lookup web part that we just created in EASYProcess. Let's put it in the default web part group. Save. So now I'll go back to that page, the test page. And I'll edit the page. And I'm going to insert that web part here. So web part, go to default web parts, employee lookup. Let's add that. So now I have a web part here that's kind of linking to that same web part in EASYProcess.
Right.
So if I go back to EASYProcess and just put down a quick section and a quick label just so we can see that it is working properly. I'll add some test data to our label. I'll build it, and then hop over to SharePoint and refresh the page. Oh, I gotta save it. There you go. I saved it, and as the page refreshed, you can see here's our label with the hard-coded data, just so you can see that it's connected. So now we'll actually create a data source in this web part and display data on the page. So JDE data, let's name it. We need our JDE connection information. We're going to connect to address book master. And we're going to do a join on, what is the table name? Address by day, F0116. And then save and close. Okay, so now I'm going to drag and drop this data here into my web part. Oh, I need to mess up my query. Maybe 8 equals prefix ALAN8. There we go. So now that that's properly, there's our columns coming from the two tables, and we'll do a drag and drop. And let's say I want to pull address number, name. I change the description here. And let me go look up which field is the actual. So we'll get effective date, which is ALEFTB, and actually address line 1 sounds good. Scroll down.
So this is a good use case scenario showing, the need to in fact understand JDE business functions when integrated with JD Edwards.
Right.
Okay. There we go. So there's the 4 columns. It's address number, name, effective date, and address line 1. So let me build that. And then we'll hop back over into SharePoint, refresh, and there's our list. So as you were saying, this effective date, it's in Julian format, so it's 0. But if we go over to that specific field, go to the data, we can do a value transformation here. So let's say date time, we want to convert from JDE date, add that, save it, and then rebuild. By the way, when I say building a web part, nothing is actually being compiled. We're just building the XML to display the web part on the page.
Right. And that web part can be reused in other pages.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes. There we go. So since it was 0, it's going to convert weird. You can do rules to, display what you want if it's 0. But just to, let me go back into my data source and do an order by. So order by this column. Oh, you know what? Yeah. There you go. So there are some dates that you can actually read. 7/20/2019 and so on. And then also EASYProcess has built-in themes. So if I hop back over to this list section and I change, where's that, the skin. We have some pre-built skins in EASYProcess. You can also edit these as well. But I want to say list style, rebuild. So it's going to pretty up the list so it looks a little better and not just a plain format.
Right.
So that's just a quick example on how you can pull JDE information real time directly into SharePoint.